Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I thought I would do a fantasy romance book recommendations video. Now, if you guys are new to my channel, you guys would probably not know, but I'm not really the biggest fantasy romance book reader. I tend to gravitate towards more contemporary romances and also historical romances. But in the last couple of years, I found myself gravitating towards fantasy romances because I wanted a different world to escape to. And I just thought that it would be interesting and it'd be fun to try different genres. So I jumped into some fantasy romance books and I found myself loving a couple of these, and I want to recommend you these books if you too are a beginner fantasy romance book reader like me. So the first book that I want to recommend you to read is this one called The Demon of the Wood, and it's by Willow Quinn. It's book number 1 in her Fates and Fables series, and this was the book that actually inspired me to film this video in the first place because when I read it, I was so captivated by the writing style and also the storyline itself. This one has ultimate cozy fantasy vibes, so if you are looking for a book to snuggle up to in bed, definitely check this one out. This one features our female heroine who was born into a family that was kind of broken. Her father passed away, I think, earlier on, or her father was unknown to her in the first place. Just like the father was just never in the picture to begin with. And then our heroine's mom was very mistreated by the village. She couldn't find any job, so what she ended up doing was actually selling her body in order to pay for the bills and pay for the food and pay for all the living expenses. And then her mom passed away, so she ended up living with her uncle who had like a few sons, and she was treated like a servant. She was verbally abused a lot of the times, and she was treated like nothing but a maid, and everybody really hated her in the house. So all to say, she is not living the best life that she could be living. One day she decides to kind of venture out and meet someone special at the pub, and what happens is that a scandal breaks out and she finds herself unable to return back to the home that she grew up in. And then that's when our hero steps in, and our hero kind of takes her into his house and then nurtures her and makes sure that she is well and able and that she's well and taken care of. And then they both grow this like really special bond because they both were treated like black sheeps in the town and also in their families. Our hero is a demon, and he is always like misconstrued. Like everybody thinks the worst of him. Everybody thinks that he is dangerous and that he kills people and that he brainwashes people, but in reality he's just like this harmless monster. And I really loved the couple, and then sometimes it was quite spicy too as well. So I really enjoyed this, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next two books that I want to recommend are books that lots of people on BookTube have already talked about, and I kind of given in and read it and I really enjoyed it. But if you haven't read it yet, I think that these books are the best beginner series if you guys want to check out fantasy romances. I feel like Kimberly Lemon's books are fantasy, but it has a lot of contemporary romance elements to it, so it's very easy for beginners like us to kind of jump right into it. So the first book in the series is called The Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, and essentially our heroine is living her best cozy small town village life. She sells spices. She has a family that really cares about her, and she really cares about all the friends in the village that she lives in. But then what happens is that there's this demon who she bumps into, and this demon wants to kill this evil witch in the village who is enslaving his people. And then they get kind of tied up into this like really big adventure where they're trying to solve this issue that's currently happening with his people. It's a very slow burn fantasy romance, I must say, and it does have a lot of contemporary romance elements in it that makes it easy for me to digest, and I quite enjoyed it. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, but I think like the main book that I really want to recommend is this one, which is the second book in the series called The Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. I just really like this book more than the first book, mostly because our hero falls first, and our hero pines for our heroine for a very long time, and he is just kind of following at her footsteps and trying to convince her that they are mated and that it's not the love potion that has made him fall in love with her, and it's just strictly his like natural instincts that he wants to be with her. And she is very obviously kind of insecure about the whole situation. She doesn't know if he's being real or not, or if he's just kind of like saying things. So it's really nice to see how she opens up and she slowly falls in love with our hero. But all to say, these two books are really good, and I'm really excited to read the third book that is, I think, coming out this year. So the next couple books that I want to recommend is also part of a series too as well. This one's called Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare. It's the first book in her series. And then the next book in the series is called What the Hex, which came out this year. So Go Hex Yourself was a book that I read last year and I found myself really enjoying. I thought I wouldn't like it as much because it's just very different from all the books I read. But I really, really liked Jessica Clare's writing style. I felt like it was like very atmospheric. It was cozy. It was easy to digest. There wasn't a big magical world system with complex magical rules that made it really hard for me to get into. It was just kind of like straightforward, which I really appreciated. So this one involves our heroine who is just looking for a job, and she found a job where she is a familiar, and then she gets room and board, she gets food, she gets paid really well. So she's just going to be an executive assistant to a witch, and it's only then until she realizes that it's not just like an executive assistant role, but she's also a familiar too as well. And essentially what I gathered a familiar is where a witch channels its energy through a person who can like, you know, hold on to the energy so that they can cast spells and things like that. So she is actually a familiar, and it's there where she lives in this like really ancient like mansion situation where she meets her employer's nephew, who is our hero. And our hero is very grumpy, he's grouchy, he doesn't want to really talk to the familiar at all, but he finds himself really drawn to her, and they have like this like friendship first, and then it turns into a romance. And obviously there is like a bigger plot to this where there are issues that are happening, there's this grand adventure, and then there's this ultimate problem that they have to resolve. I enjoyed it a lot, and that's why I picked up the second book, which is called What the Hex. This one kind of follows the same trope too as well. It's Grumpy Sunshine trope, and it follows our hero who has been banished and he can't really cast the big spells anymore, and he's craving that energy because the society is kind of looking down on him, and he just wants to cast these big spells, but he can't do it unless he has a familiar. And he ends up getting matched with our heroine who is his familiar, and they have this quirky relationship and this dynamic where it's enemies to lovers. She doesn't know what is happening with her body whenever they cast spells, so it's really interesting and entertaining to watch her try to figure out and try to understand herself a little bit more. She really takes pride in being a familiar, and she really wants to be a good familiar because she is led by example by her parents, who are familiars too as well, and she just wants to do a good job, but she finds it very insufferable and infuriating to work closely with her warlock. And it was just so cute. I really like these two characters together. I think they matched really well. And I really enjoyed the storyline and the world setting that Jessica Clare built. I don't know if there's going to be another book in this series from Jessica Clare, but I'll keep my eyes out on it, and I'll definitely pick up the next book. But anyways, that is it for all the cozy fantasy romance recommendations. Please let me know any of your recommendations down below, because I'm always looking forward to any cozy romance books. And I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye.